Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet, and today I'm with Aoibhinn Murray. Hi there, Aoibhinn. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Fantastic. And I've been really looking forward to our conversation here because to fully divulge to the community, I've had a healing session with Aoibhinn a few weeks ago, and I've got to say it was amazing. Not just me, but my partner as well. And she had similar feedback on it. It was like quite something. So I was interested to explore this further because I know the story behind this is not exactly mainstream conventional.
Absolutely, yeah. It's anything but. Even in the spiritual world, it's not normal, So it's pretty out there. So you need to put your woo-woo hat on.
Yes, yes. But you see, this is the thing. The more I get into this, the more I realize that the abnormal is actually really that is part of reality. It's just that we hadn't appreciated it till now. Now is the time when all these new versions and expanded versions of reality are coming on stream. So here's an opportunity for us to kind of grasp it and to try and get our heads around it and see where it takes us. So first thing in there, could you just like give us a little bit of background on what it is you do? Because I know it's not just one thing, it's a bunch of things, but if you give us that and a little bit of history about how you've got to where you are.
Well, I am a combination, a bit of a mixed bag. So I am a healer first and foremost. All of my work is about assisting people to get into their essential self or to embody more of their essential self. And part of that is mediumship and tarot. I'm also a massage therapist, I'm a shamanic practitioner, and a teacher. So I teach in this area as well. And I'm very keen on teaching people about their energetic field and their sovereignty. They're standing in their own power and taking responsibility for who and what they are. We have, as a species, we have been conditioned to hand our power away from the time we're born.
Yes.
So we're born, we go straight into, we have the first few years, we then go into the educational system, and you may have gone into a belief system, like a spiritual belief system or a religion. So the conditioning starts as soon as you enter this plane of existence. And then you may start having experiences, you may start having spiritual experiences or esoteric or metaphysical experiences, as I did at a young age, and you don't really know where to go with that. So hence the reason I went on the spiritual path, to try and understand myself more, to try and understand what I was experiencing. And either you could say fortunately or unfortunately, when I started my trainings, if you like, about 29 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, there was a lot of teachers teaching the purely light side of spiritual work and healing
Right.
work, and not addressing the shadow aspects. And I feel, as a practitioner and as a teacher, that it's important to explain both sides to people so they understand what's coming up in themselves, their own shadow aspects that are coming up to be healed,
Mm-hmm.
and also when they're working with other people to be able to hold a space for people that they may be working with, if they have clients, and take, I'm all about taking the woo woo out of this,
Yeah.
bringing the information in and out into the world in a very real way and tangible way.
Mm. And it's interesting you say that about the shadow side as well, because Chris Styles, who 365 pin code, Chris is a genius at what he does. And whenever he pulls together your charts, he always talks about your main numbers, but also your shadow numbers. So every aspect has that duality to it, if you like. So to be aware of, okay, this is the public facing bit, this is the bit that's in the background that offsets that, and it's kind of like an awareness of both helps you to balance things out. So I know Chris is a big advocate of that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really important because that's how you deepen your experience of your life,
Mm,
and you deepen your path while you're here. Is so important to try and get to know yourself on so many different levels, and not just get the hit of the what I call the fluffy bunnies, where it's all there can be a bit of spiritual bypassing in the community, where when I was kicking around and doing a lot of my trainings in the past, you were encouraged not to look at that side because you would attract it to you. The only place I came across where that didn't happen was with the shaman who trained me when I did my shamanic training, and he taught and encouraged us to experience those aspects of ourselves as well, and to integrate them, because these parts of us can be very wounded, and they need to be loved, and they need to be integrated and accepted as part of the whole. And then you can function in society in a much greater way, and then you can be of service to other people and to spirit, because I'm in service to spirit in a much more profound way and much more meaningful way.
Yeah, it's and again, it's interesting because when I did my interview with Sheila Seppi, who's the walk-in, one of the things she helped to open her up was her work on the shamanic side as well, and she had her shamanic guide, if you like, or the one who taught her how to do all this, and she was a descendant of the Hopi Native American Indians, which I found quite interesting because I believe your shamanic teacher also had Native American type of roots as well. Is that true?
There were two. There was Mother Feather, who is a Cherokee elder in America. So I was invited over to her, years ago, nearly 19, 20 years ago. And I spent some time with her, and she taught me about a lot of the history of the Native American, the Cherokee, and I walked part of the Trail of Tears as well, which is where the president of the time, Andrew Jackson, had removed a lot of the Native Americans from their land, and they had to walk this, what's called the Trail of Tears. There was a place called Mantle Rock, and I walked under Mantle Rock, and this is where the soldiers and the indigenous people would shelter for the night, and they had so many illnesses and diseases, and I don't know if people have cleared it or not, but I know that it's the spirit of a Native American woman came up to me with a baby and was trying to give me her baby to look after. So there was still a lot of trauma there. That is separate to my shamanic training. That was with an Irish shaman. He runs a facility called Shamanism Ireland.
Okay.
So there were the two of them, and then I had a spiritual director as part of that at one point, who lived up the Dublin Mountains as well, so I'd go up and see him. So there have been various different teachers along the way, and then there have been teachers who have taught me other healing modalities as well. But the Indigenous, the Native American connection was so strong for me. When I went over, we stayed in this really backwater town in Maryland, and the back of the house actually backed onto a forest. And you see these deer and all different animals coming down. And so I spent a lot of time in nature and a lot of time sitting on the porch with Mom Feather, and she would tell me all about the history. And they built a sacred fire, and they gave myself and my partner at the time a Native American name. And I didn't want to leave. When I came home to Ireland, I spent about a week crying because I felt like I had just been ripped away from my home. I felt so connected to this land and to these people. So connected. Yeah.
It just shows, doesn't it? Because again, it come back to past lives, right? And connections that they're at a soul level. And again, I know it's a bit of a stretch for the mainstream folks necessarily, but having lived multiple lives, we've a lot of us who've been on the planet before, I mean, fine, if you're a starseed and this is your first incarnation, but for many people who've been here through thousands of incarnations and you've experienced so many things, it's just you don't realize it, because when you're born into this world, the deal is that you forget everything. But you can make those connections, and sometimes they reach out to you as well, because the reason you go to a specific place, it's not a coincidence. It's a synchronicity, because it's teaching you what you already knew, but you just didn't know you knew it until you'd been there. It's just like the weirdest thing. But I can kind of and I've studied quite a bit on the Native American side of things, and one of the things I do recognize is the deep wisdom of the people. Obviously, a lot of what happened there was really horrible in terms of the European settlers and what they did, because they didn't understand any better. They thought they were civilizing them. And the reality is that it should have been the other way around, I think, in many ways. Living in harmony with nature, living in balance with the world around them was part of who they were. And, you know, there's so much we can learn today from the way they were when they were allowed to be who they effectively evolved to be, I suppose. But anyway, so yeah, this shamanic journeying side of things. So that's something that I've always been fascinated by that. I want to do some journeying. I've never been able to do any journeying yet. I've not got my mind around it yet. Your experience of that, can you give us a little clue on how that's been for you?
Well, when you learn to journey, it's like meditation. It's a practice. It's something that you can't just do once or twice or three times and think you're going to have mastered it. It doesn't
No.
work like that. So, in shamanic terms, you would go into an altered state of consciousness, either through drumming or trance dancing, or somebody might imbibe a substance to do that. My experience has been through drumming, and that brings you into an altered state whereby you can then start exploring what's called non-ordinary realities, go in and get information, because traditionally the shaman was the person that people came to find out information and to solve issues, and the shaman would journey on behalf of the villager who had come to them, or the tribe member who had come to them, and bring the information back and assist with the healing of that individual through that. So I think one of the blocks for people can be where they dismiss what their imagination is doing for them when they're having a journey. They'll begin to think, is this just my imagination? Or, yeah, I must be making all of this up. And yes, that's fantastic. Your imagination is a tool that you have, that you're blessed with. In our society, we have undervalued the imagination. We have rated it at zero in a lot of ways in order to disempower people, in order for them not to be able to understand their own tools and their own power.
Yes.
So the imagination is used. So what I've learned over the years is I don't dismiss anything that I see when I'm in any kind of trance work, and I will take a note of that. It takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes practice, and that's how you master it.
Yes.
And in that said, though, I was at a cacao ceremony on Sunday, and as soon as I took the cacao, I had an instant reaction to it. I really connected with the energy, mother energy, and I wasn't expecting it. I thought, it's going to be a nice thing to do, and it'll be, I've just come back from Morocco, as you know, and I had some spiritual work to do over there. It'll be, I feel called to go to the ceremony, but I didn't know why. And then Sunday night, I began having out of body experiences about 2.5 years ago. And I've had about 2 or 3, and on Sunday night I had 3 of them in succession.
Wow.
Sunday night, and I got no sleep. So these ceremonies and these practices that we carry out, they don't always take effect at the time. You can have the impact of them can have an effect later on. For me, it was pretty immediate, and then that night I had a couple of or 3 OBEs. But for other people, it may take a period of weeks. And also there has to be time for integration. When you're doing this type of ritualistic work or practice, the 3D self isn't accustomed to it. So there has to be time for the 3D self to be able to assimilate what's going on and kind of make sense of it to a certain degree.
Yes.
But it does take practice. Now, I know of a certain person who keeps saying, I have no superpowers. I have no superpowers. I have no. You know who this person might be, don't you, John? And yet this person has very heightened abilities and is maybe not fully aware that. So there's the work that has taken place and the work that the individual has done, and it actually is working. But you may not see it at the time, or you may not acknowledge it until later.
Yeah.
That's why the consistency, the persistence of it.
Yes. Yes, no, and it's a good point. I tend to dip in and out of things too much. I'm curious about everything, but I also, one of the things I always think is that if I was going to say superpowers are non-specific, because I think it's more my job to kind of reach out to people who have very specific abilities, like you, like Faye, like Sheila, and what you bring is something very special. And I love the idea of us drawing this together to actually get out and teach people, because I mean, to me, this is one of the most amazing things. And again, I've talked about this before, is that we have a team, because as you say, we get programmed and conditioned when we're born into this world to believe this version of 3D reality, which tries to draw somewhere between 2D and 3D because it's limiting us. Whereas in reality, we actually have an enormous amount of ability and power that we just do not appreciate because we're told we don't. And the fact is that we have this team, right? We have a team of guides, angels, whatever, who are there to support us through life. But you have to ask. Yeah. You have to reach out. But for most people, they would dismiss the thought that they even have a team, because it's not logical in the way that we're brought up and programmed and conditioned in life. And 5 years ago, I would have thought it was complete nonsense. Now I know it's true. So one place I want to take this conversation, because to go back to the healing session that you gave me, that is something that is really special. Now, and I know the background to that, how that came about. Again, it's like, this all goes out under the name of the Twiglet Zone because it's fantastical tales accompanied by a savoury snack. Now, because this gets fantastical. Now, I don't have to stretch my mind to actually believe what actually happened, but I wonder, would you be prepared to share with our audience exactly how the healing modalities to create the quantum light pod healing came to be?
Yes, yes. Okay, so I'd ask everybody to put their tinfoil hat on first of all before we go any further, and just keep an open mind and keep an open heart. So let me go back to insomnia. I had a session a few years ago for insomnia. I have been experiencing entities for a very long time. I had been experiencing entity attacks for a very long time, not knowing why, trying to figure out how to stop them. Had this insomnia session, and during that, it's, what's it called? Rapid Transformational Therapy, RTT, hypnotherapy. And what I figured out during it was it actually began at 5 years of age. So I started seeing entities at 5 years of age, and I started experiencing them. Now, I knew that I had been experiencing them all the way through my teenage years and my adult years. Because I was so accustomed to it, I just dealt with it. And nobody else could really help me. None of my teachers knew how to help me with it. And what I found was that the teachers who tried to help me with it, they put it into their own frame of reference. So what I was talking about seeing wasn't really what they could advise on.
Right.
So fast forward then to 2.5 years ago, I had been a healer for 29 years and doing all my holistic stuff as well. Now, in between that, I have worked in the corporate field, I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the private sector as well. So I've gained quite a lot of experience in various different areas. Because of the recession back down in 2008, I had to let go of the therapy room and go back into that field again to make ends meet, because nobody was spending money on this stuff. So 2.5 years ago, I get a call out of the blue from a friend of mine who is a medium in England, and we used to be in a mediumship circle together when I lived there. And I hadn't spoken to him for years, and he contacted me and he said, we had a conversation, and he said, could I do a healing session for him online? And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. So the day before I was due to have a healing session with him, I just tuned into his energy just to see what it was like, what was going on, just to maybe scan him a little bit. But when I went in to have a look, I was met by a spirit guide with this mechanism that turns out to be the light pod. And I was like, what is this now? What is this you're showing me? So I was instructed to place the person inside. Like when I say place the person inside, I mean place his light body or his energetic body on the
Right.
quantum level inside him. So when I'm working with him, I would imagine his light body being inside of this. So my consciousness would be inside this contraption with him. And then I start working with him as well. So I said to him the next day, do you mind if we don't just do pure Reiki or vortex healing? Do you mind if I actually incorporate this new thing that I've been given, because I need to test it out and try it out? And he said, yeah, no problem. And it was a very interesting session. Because he was a medium as well, some of the things that I saw he had seen as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we had another session shortly after that, and the issue that he had presented with cleared up, which was great. So about a week later, I'm doing my normal meditation, and because I often journey, I was lying on the sofa. It's much more comfortable for me than sitting up. And suddenly I went into a completely different level that I haven't experienced before. Now, I know I've experienced conscious astral traveling because I can feel myself sometimes rolling out of my body or rolling
Right.
backwards. And I know, and for years I wouldn't allow myself to actually do that because it freaked me out too much. But over time, I've allowed myself go a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. But I knew this was different. I felt myself being pulled up,
Mm.
and I started going down these kind of a vortex, and it had blue and pink and white in it. They were the colours, the main colours that I remember. And then it would turn into a different vortex. So there's all these vortices. I was going through different kind of tunnels, if you like.
Right.
But I would land every so often. And one of the places I landed was, what do you call it? A front step, a porch.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't an Irish house. I knew it wasn't an English house because of the way it was designed. So there were steps up to this porch, and then you had the porch, and then there were dogs. There were about 4 or 5 dogs on the porch. And I saw 2 men walking up. They were taking boxes out of a car, and there was beer in one of the boxes.
Mm.
And they were walking up the steps into the house, and I was observing all of this, kind of going, this is wild, this is really mad stuff, again, this is mad even for me. And then one of the dogs started barking at me.
Mm.
And I get on very well with animals, and I love dogs in particular. So I was trying to pet the dog, and I was trying to soothe the dog. But the dog was having none of this. And then I was thinking, why is the dog not, I'm trying to placate the dog. Why isn't it working? But I realised, I looked at his eyes, and I realised he was looking right through me. So he
Right.
couldn't actually see me. And I went, oh my God, this is what it must be like to be a ghost and to be grounded, and you can't move on and people can't see you. And I thought, wow, what an amazing lesson to get, what an amazing experience to have.
Wow.
And then suddenly I was up and I was flying again. And this experience is like, it's a bit different to astral traveling. You feel like you're being sucked up and sucked up and sucked up, but yet you still have the ability to do things that you want to do, and then suddenly you're pulled off again. And I always tend to go as far as, I went up into past the clouds because I was looking at everything. I was experimenting with the energy. I wanted to see what I can do, what I can't do. I remember I was going down a street, and there was a roundabout, and I remember thinking, I wonder, can I go through the roundabout? Will my body allow me to go through? And I was able to go through the roundabout.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was playing around with it, and it was fascinating as well. But I would often get so far up, and I'd get up to as far as the stars, and then I'd start going above that. And I remember hitting a ceiling, and I couldn't go any further.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, actually, I'm glad I can't go any further because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one of the experiences. And then suddenly I'm back in my body, and I can hear the music beside me. So, I mean, I was not dreaming. I was absolutely not dreaming. I was fully conscious. And I've had lucid dreams all my life, but this wasn't a lucid dream. So I was fully aware that, and it felt like I was inside a tin can. My body felt like a tin can, and I was kind of inside it. It's a strange thing to try and explain. And I'm lying there with my eyes closed, but that didn't matter. I could still see. And I can see 3 beings above me. And there's this, it's kind of like gauze or
Yes.
muslin cloth.
Right.
and it's above my head, so I couldn't see their features, but I could see the shape of them.
Okay.
And all I felt was deep peace. I felt a lot of peace. I felt very non-threatened. I knew I was safe.
Mm.
And I realized, and my first immediate thing was, oh, they're a medical team. There's a
Mm.
medical team here to work with me. There's a medical team here. And I was like, where did that come from?
Wow.
So I knew on some level there was they were there to work on my body. And they began pulling something out of my left arm, nearly round my shoulder area. And I felt this object being pulled and pulled and pulled. And I remember thinking, this is really going to hurt when it pops the skin. So I
Mm.
was preparing myself, and I was starting to get a bit tense, and I was preparing myself for this thing to be extracted from the skin. And then it popped, and it didn't hurt at all. And that's when I
Mm.
realized, oh, it's not in my physical body. It's actually in
Right.
my light body. It's my etheric
Yeah.
body that they're taking
Yeah.
it out of. They removed another two of these, but I didn't experience those. I didn't see those. I just know that they were in my lower area, like my
Mm.
legs or somewhere like that. But I felt like I had been allowed to see this happening, and I had been allowed to experience it. Well, I remember I kicked off that meditation around 12 o'clock, and it was around 12:45 when I came out of the experience,
Mm.
and my mind was blown. I'd seen entities before, I'd experienced entities before. I've been physically attacked by them. I have dealt with all sorts of crazy stuff.
Mm.
Cray cray. This was on a totally different level. I did not
Right.
know how to process this at all. So I contacted somebody who I thought might be able to process or help me to understand it.
Mm.
And this is a woman I had done some work with in the January, and this was either the April or the May time in 2020. I'd been advised by my mediumship mentor, who I've been with for 5 years, my current one. He had said, you've got to have a session with this woman, because I had a session with her and the information that came out was incredible. So booked a session, 4 hours long. And the stuff that came out of my mouth during the session, I didn't even believe afterwards, even though it's all recorded.
Wow.
But apparently even now I still find it difficult. I was channeling my boss, for want of a better word, who was talking about some personal stuff about mine, because I didn't believe. I
Mm.
knew ETs, I knew aliens, I knew these things existed, but that wasn't my path. My
No.
path had been the spiritual path up until that point. So he came in, started talking through me, and I sent him packing. I said, oh no, I'm not having this. I'm not having anybody coming into my body and starting to talk and channeling. No way. This is not, this is not safe as far as I'm concerned. So I sent my boss off with a flea in his ear. And the practitioner said, would you mind if he came back in? Because, maybe we could find out a bit more information. So I said, okay, but keep it short. So he came back in and he gave a lot of knowledge, passed on a lot of knowledge about the work that I do in the universe. And it was quite enlightening. After I finished that session in January, I didn't really think much about it after that,
Mm.
until I had the incident in April or May time, whenever it
Mm.
was. And I thought, who on earth can I contact who might think that this isn't mad,
Yeah.
who will actually believe me? So I contacted her, and she's a channeler. So she replied, and she had gotten a message from these three entities saying that these were implants that I had placed in myself before I incarnated.
Ah.
So I wouldn't go too fast too soon.
Right.
I wanted to have as many earthly experiences as I could have, and I really have. I have worked in so many different industries. I've done so many. I've sung on stage. I've danced professionally. I've all sorts of things,
Mm.
I've worked in banks that are totally non-related. And the going too fast too soon makes total sense now, because when those things were removed, whatever they were, I feel one of them may have been what I have found out to be an astral tag, where you can be tagged on the astral realm. And I think maybe I was attracting a lot of different entities so I could learn how to get into my strength, get into my
Right.
sovereignty,
Mm.
and not give in. Because now I teach others, do not go into fear, because you're consenting when you go into fear.
Mm.
You're giving your power away. There's a lot of stuff that I teach on my courses with regard to this. and getting above the conditioning and the mind control of the
Mm.
3D plane. So it was about a week between that experience of the three entities and the light pod. The light pod came about a week before that, and
Mm.
then the three entities came and removed those things. And after that, everything just changed.
Mm.
My whole life totally changed.
Mm.
I went back into my work full time. No work for me in the corporate sector anymore,
Right.
and it was all word of mouth. So I first of all I asked for volunteers so I could start practicing the modality and
Yes.
working with it, so I could start to understand what it is I'm dealing with, what energy I'm working with. And the feedback was so amazing from each of the volunteers that I got to a point where I thought, well, I can actually start offering this as a service now.
Mm.
And I didn't realize at the beginning of it, a lot of the people who were coming to me for it were teachers themselves, or they were mediums, and then they were telling their students, or they were telling other people in their groups, and then they were starting to book online for this as well. But
Mm.
my own abilities went up too. So
Mm.
when I work, oh, I have to tell you something before I talk about this. I said to the team, because I said, what do you want me to call this, my spirit team? And they said quantum light pod. And I went, oh no, that sounds so awful. I said, can I just call it quantum light healing? No, we have to have the pod in there as well. So that's why it's called quantum light pod healing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, well, it's. I know we're a team, and I volunteered to be here, so let's go for it.
And you know what? Again, just to interject on that, really, I suppose, having gone through that, I felt that light pod, and it's the weirdest feeling.
Yes, other people have said that to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I did the healing for my mediumship mentor, and he said the same thing because I said, I was nearly kind of saying, I'm sorry, this is the name of it, right? He was saying, no, it's actually, it suits because I felt really cocooned and really
Yes.
nurtured.
Yes.
What I was going to say to you is when the light pod forms, it comes out through the person's crown chakra. And it used to come out of their solar plexus in the beginning, and that changed, and now comes out through the crown. And it forms an egg-shaped kind of structure around the person with lots and lots of different kind of grid lines and that. And then my consciousness goes in, and I start reading their energy centers, and I start
Mm.
reading the aura and being able to remove attachments, being able to remove parasites and see parasites, and tuning into illnesses that are just in manifestation now, or the imprint of them is still there from a previous illness. There just were a lot of things that came online for me that
Mm.
were very new to work with
Mm.
as a consequence of it. So it seems to be, it's still evolving, it's still developing and changing, but it is pretty magic. I have to say, it's pretty magic to be able to
Well,
do
it
it.
is. Well, it's magic to be on the receiving end of it. That I do know. And you know, the weirdest thing is that you were over in Ireland, I was in the UK. I was laying out on the sofa and just like feeling this. And it's the weirdest thing. So just to explain to the community, what happens is that we just had a bit of a chat in advance, and then I lay back and just sort of like Aoibhinn's over in Ireland, and but we had the camera kind of going, so she could see and read the energy or whatever. But I could feel this happening because even though Aoibhinn, you don't say very much during the session, and that you might be like an hour going through from top to bottom, right? So like covering all the energy body and all this kind of thing. I could feel the activity going through my body, starting at the crown, and I could feel you moving down into the third eye, into the throat chakra, into the heart, and I could feel it. It's just the weirdest thing. But it was like that. You used the word cocoon. It was like I was in this beautiful cocoon, and I was like, you get lost in that moment. It's just a beautiful experience. You just kind of get in. It's just really lovely, and I was really happy afterwards as well because you said, oh yeah, it'll dissolve over the next 6 days or 7 days or something like that. And I said, well, that's fantastic, because as I was laying there, I was like, I would love to be able to sleep in this when it's done, so that I can kind of like really enjoy this. I certainly have recommended it to others who are kind of lining up right now, actually, to have the same kind of session. So
I know some people have been in touch recently to book. But that's the great thing. That's one of the things that I said to the team. I said, do I need to deconstruct this mechanism after a session, and they said no, you don't have to. It's going to fall away and dissolve organically because it comes from each individual organically. I think that's lovely, because that's very self-empowering. You know, a person may be able to maybe charge it up for a bit longer. I'm not sure yet, but that might be something that I can look at with the guides, you know, keeping it charged up. And this is a prototype. A friend of mine, Faye, you know Faye Vale.
You know Faye Vale very well.
I got a bit burnt out about 2 years ago, because I was seeing so many people and I was just doing so much work, and it was all new and it was wonderful, but I was just doing too much.
Right.
And I've realized since then what I can do in a day, and then I need to, even though it's not my energy I'm sending, because I'm reading a lot of things, and I might have past life stuff might come up for clearing with a person. There are so many, it's so open, you know, there's so many different things that come up. So the energy is running, but I am reading as well. So, but at that point, I was really starting to burn out. And I remember talking to Faye about it. And because she has a direct link with the interdimensionals and she does the artwork for them, she got a message from them saying that they apologized because it's a prototype and they haven't run it before with anybody. So they're still trying to figure out what works and when it's too much and when it's not. So they said, let's take a break and we'll start with it again, you know, when you're ready to start working with it again. Yeah. So
wow. And you know, that's the other thing, is that from that reading as well, from the QLPH session, then you give me a 15-minute download afterwards about what you found as you went through. You know, I had a gritty crown for starters.
Very dare you.
So, but it was fascinating because it's like a mediumship kind of reading as well, combined with the energetic body, and the whole thing is fascinating, and I love it. And I know that my partner, she found exactly the same thing. She loved what she got out of that, and I definitely would recommend it. And I'm going to put up the link to the website as well to go and check this out, because you will not be disappointed. That's what I can tell you for sure. No.
But you know what the thing is for me? It's so joyful. It's so amazing to be part of this, because I get to connect with somebody at such an intimate level. I get to see what their spirit looks like. I get to see part of their soul mission. I get to see what they have actually brought into their tool bag to bring into this incarnation. And sometimes they don't even know it themselves, or they know it at a very deep, deep level, but they won't voice it because they think, oh, well, who am I to do that? Who are you not to do that? You have been gifted with these tools and use them. And so I'm always helping people to work on themselves, working on the energy centers and coaching them to and I'm happy, I do this in sessions, like healing sessions as well, helping them to learn how to shield themselves and use their energy field as a buffer to the outside world, and then strengthen their energy field. Because a lot of people don't realize, for example, if you have an issue with boundaries and you're trying to set a verbal boundary, or you think that the only way you can do it is sit down, look the person in the eye and keep your level tone of voice and bring it all out, but you find that in itself might be too confrontational, there are techniques you can use with energy so that you can clear that and you can strengthen your boundaries energetically, whereby the person will just begin to respect your boundaries because they feel the shift in you and they respond to that shift that has occurred in you. You know, energy is so underrated, and it seems to be just, a lot of people know about energy healing. When you understand energetics and the ins and outs of energetics, and you can see how energy is neutral and it can be used for positively polarized actions or negatively polarized actions, and that energy is used for both of those on this planet. So when you get information and you learn how that all works, you're in such a powerful position, really, in your own life.
Yes.
You know, because you're at the helm of your own life then, and you're able to take action.
Yeah, and this is it. This is the power of thought, isn't it? It's an incredibly powerful thing, and that's one of the things that I never realized. I thought a thought was a thought. I didn't realize it has its own energy and that you can create. You know, thoughts become things. Talk about manifesting and all this kind of stuff, which, I think some of the stuff that's been taught on manifesting generally, it misses the point a lot of the time, because what it tends to encourage people to do is say, okay, right, I want to be a multimillionaire.
I know.
Can I be a multimillionaire, please? How come my manifesting is not working? It's broken. It doesn't work. It's nonsense. It misses the point.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that, again, comes down to our programming conditioning in the materialistic world, to believe that all our answers come from, materialistic gains and stuff. When we're in the mainstream, we're so off course with the true version of reality. And to a lot of people, this will sound like woo-woo nonsense. And I completely respect that perspective, because that's why we put it on the Twiglet Zone. But, what I'm hoping is that it creates a spark. It creates a spark of curiosity, that people will then just open their minds, just maybe a little, maybe try things for themselves, because the power is within. I think this is one of the things that I got as well, is that I mentioned about this team, Team John is here, Team Aoibhinn is there. We have these enormously powerful teams around us, because within the mortal physical body, we can keep an enormous amount of energy, way more than we realize. But the fact is, it's a fraction compared to what we have outside of ourselves. And again, we're talking about physical body versus etheric body versus astral body, and all these different things that we don't learn about this in school, right? It's not part of the standard programming and conditioning. But in the truth of it is in the decades ahead. And this is where it will become normality and reality. At the moment, we're still kind of like a little bit out on the woo-woo side. But I think that the light is growing, and it's going to reach an awful lot more people. And I'd love to think that Elevated Planet and the work that you do, and that Faye does, and that Sheila's doing over in Colorado, they're all kind of reaching out and putting that energy out there. And hopefully a lot of this will sort of resonate with people at some point in when it's right for their journey. Now, one final question for you, Aoibhinn, if that's okay. The three entities that have appeared to you, and I know you've been in touch with other galactic entities over the decades, but do you have any affinity with different parts of the universe?
Yes. Okay. So when I started doing the healing work, an Arcturian guide came in and a Syrian guide came in. And don't ask me how I knew that. I just knew that. And I didn't know anything about these. I didn't know anything about these races. And then I started to look up Arcturians. I felt really, 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 really resonant with that. A lot of resonance. And I started looking up and doing research into what they are. And they're the healers of the universe. So, yes, I feel very... And the funny thing is, I know this woman contacted me, it must be about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. She's a healer, a master healer. And she has interacted with lots of different entities, reptilians, lyrans, different insectoids. They pitch up in her kitchen. She's had some wacky, crazy connections. So all around the time where have started having the healing, being given the healing energy, and having the experience with the three entities, I get a message, or I'm in contact with her. She makes wands. Okay.
Okay.
And she says to me, I really want to make you a wand and send it to you for your work. Now, here's my wand. I have it in front. There's my wand that I use for my healing work. When I was having my second experience with the woman who had done the past life regression with me in parallel, actually ended up turning into a parallel life situation. So my second session with her only this year, 2 years later, I said, I feel the need to have one of these again. So I had a session with her, and the consciousness of Merlin came through. And the consciousness of Merlin started speaking through me this time. And I'm like, what am I? Am I like a telephone box for everybody? What's going on? I don't channel entities. I don't speak, the way some people do. I don't. I started doing light language recently, which has kind of freaked me out a little bit. But anyway, that's by the by. So Merlin comes through and goes on to the recording saying, Aoibhinn needs a wand for the energetic structures that she's going to be creating. A day later, that's when this lady contacted me about, I want to gift you a wand. I want to make you a wand. I want to send it to Ireland for you. Because I've seen the work that you're doing on Facebook, and this is extremely powerful. She said she has a mechanism that measures the material from the wands before they're turned into wands and then afterwards. And this, whatever the name, this meter is, goes up as far as 1,000 hertz. And she said, your wand went right up to 1,000 hertz. So she actually said, I don't know how powerful it is because the mechanism only goes up as far as 1,000 hertz, but it's a minimum of 1,000 hertz. So she said, use it wisely.
Yeah, wow.
So, yeah, it's powerful.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy, isn't it? You know, because it's like, you know, this is bordering on Harry Potter territory now. You know, I mean, you're kind of doing the woo-woo stuff, and next you're going to show me your owl. But yeah, I think even a lot of this stuff which has come out in fiction, even the Tolkien stuff as well as the Harry Potter stuff, there's a degree of reality in so many things that start off as fiction.
Well, you know, John, there's a thing called revelation of the method, and you can look this up if you haven't heard of it before. Okay. And this is where they put information out into the consciousness.
Yes.
Before it happens. And that's how timelines are created. Let's call them the little gang who wouldn't be of the Lightworkers' ilk, who had control of the planet for a very long time. So they will place something into the consciousness through films, through adverts, radio, lots of different ways, and get it out there so the individual or the masses, in fact, aren't shocked when it actually happens. What they will do is often they will put you into trauma, like the news, as you probably know, puts people into trauma. The imagery is violent, person goes into trauma, then that energy can be used and misdirected and directed onto a timeline that they want to create. So this is one of the units that I teach, and so it's very important to be aware of your consciousness, because it is a war on consciousness, or a battle on consciousness that we're in at the moment, and be sure of that. Be placing your consciousness with love into areas, and being neutral, staying neutral as well, not being sucked in emotionally, doing your energy work so you're not sucked in emotionally, so you're not triggered, or when you're doing your spiritual work, you're aware that you're being triggered so you can stand away.
Yes.
And I recognize what's going on here.
Yes. That makes so much sense to me. I know there's been a lot of manipulation out there, but I also know that over the next 40, 50 years that there's going to be some massive changes, stuff like war energy that's been out there, and you know, we're all very aware of that is going to disappear, which is quite remarkable in itself. And we talk about channeling. One of the ones that I follow is Lee Harris Energy, and Lee Harris channels the Z's, and that's wonderful stuff to listen to, because again, I get it about the, you know, maintaining a higher frequency of how you look at life, because we have a choice. You don't have to get sucked into the news. You don't have to believe this mainstream narrative that's out there that is designed to manipulate you. It always has been, you know, and it is the TV shows, it is the advertising, it is the news, it's the media, it's the newspapers, it's everything is very low vibrational frequency. And I think that it's so easy to get drawn into that, particularly when you don't realize what is going on. So I think the enlightenment process that is very prevalent on the planet and is growing actually gives us the opportunity to step out of it. That's the key thing, to realize we have a choice and we have a team that's there waiting for us. And once you make that connection and you start to feel the energy and the power coming through you that help to guide you on your way, then, you know, you won't look back. And yes, there is a battle of consciousness out there. It's a fascinating thing, but I honestly believe that the light is going to prevail. We are moving from a third dimensional planet to a fifth dimensional planet as Gaia, Mother Earth, right? That's the way I look at it. And therefore, you know, the frequency of energies that are out there that are dense at the moment, the war energies, the violence, the anger, that is constantly being created. And I think a lot of the labels that we apply to people these days that have come into existence under the pretense that they're there to help people identify across, different gender types, different racial types, is there to divide rather than to actually join together.
Yeah.
It's there to create a division. And it's crazy stuff, but it's so manipulative, and you don't realize it. It's under the guise of let's help people by providing everybody with a different label. You're kind of creating new tribes all over the place.
But it's divisive, it's well planned out in advance. All of this stuff has been planned out years and years in advance. And in order for us to get into the fourth dimension, which is a bridge to the fifth, we have to go through this. So this battle, if you like, of consciousness that's going on at the moment has to happen. And a lot of the light workers may not realize that it has to happen, because a person cannot wake up from Tuesday night to Wednesday night and just be enlightened. It doesn't work like that. The more light that comes onto the planet, the more darkness is revealed, the shadow aspects are revealed, the trauma is revealed. So people incrementally who haven't seen any of this before, as you rightly say, have to see it, but we can't put them into trauma. They can't see it all at once, because that defeats the whole purpose. Then we'd have mayhem on the streets, as we've seen. So it has to be done kind of incrementally, so they can hold that information, but see that information, and then a bit more of it. So there are various different things happening at different levels. So you have like the 3D level and the 4D level, where you have humans who are working with entities from the lower fourth dimension. And we've all heard about the rituals that go on with regard to that. They can't feed themselves. They've cut themselves off from their upper chakras. They've cut themselves off from the heart. These humans, they're existing really in the lower three chakras. So they don't have the same amount of prana or chi to use that other people will have, those of us who are working in the light, if you like, would have. So they will often conjure up or manipulate people, like masses of people, use that energy, or work with other entities, nefarious entities. And that has to be seen by the masses who haven't seen it yet. Yes. Because power has to come from the people. The people have to say, no, we're not having this. We have to take they have to say, realize a lot of what's being done is not being done for me, my government, my media, exactly. All of these different things, these people in power and authority are not actually holding my best interest at heart. In fact, they're abusing their position.
Yes.
So they have to see that, and that's where dismantling of the old structures begins, and we're in that now. We're in that part of the ascension. So we really got kicked into the ascension by the seat of our pants in 2020, which was a blessing. So one part wanted to use that whole illness situation and abuse that whole thing against people. But from the higher realms, say from the realm of the architects, the sixth dimensional realm, that's all working perfectly, because that is helping people to see the corruption. And that'll continue for the next few years as we move more into the dismantling of the old systems.
Yes.
And it's very, very bloody uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. And then after that, we can start creating the new structures and the new systems that are actually for the empowerment of humanity.
Yes. Yeah, it's an amazing time to be here on the planet. If we're here on purpose. We're here at a time of transition that from what I understand, has never been experienced before, has never been tried in this way before across the universe. It's like different. This is shifting up dimensions across the planet. But the point is, the more light infusion into the planet, the more the darkness will show, because everything's equilibrium, right? Yeah. So the more light, the more darkness. But there's a split that will take place. And that's the only way I can imagine it. That you're going to have the darkness, those entities over there who cannot shift themselves over here. And at some point, that's what I'm hoping is that, and I think this is what's going to happen. It's for a lot of people that they'll have the light bulb moment, they'll have the eureka moment, whatever, and they'll realize that actually they're an enormously powerful being, and that they have access to this enormous wisdom. And this is what that we're trying to do, is empower people We're not trying to be somebody's guru. We're trying to empower them to realize how powerful they are individually. Then as a group consciousness, we can be enormously powerful still. Now, unfortunately, much of the dark side understands this game already.
Yeah.
And they use it and they manipulate. But, you know, the more that we can bring on stream to the high frequency, high vibration thinking, the more people we can get into this space, it's going to just, the power of that is going to be enormous. So exciting times.
Very exciting times, yes, and I agree with you. We are splitting now. We have the organic timeline and we have the inorganic timeline. The inorganic timeline being the transhumanism timeline, and the people who will go down that timeline. Then we have the organic timeline, whereby we are now starting to set up. I'm in a group called Heal. So we're starting to set up healing hubs where people volunteer their time. You've got doctors, nurses, so it's an alternative to the national health system. You have holistic practitioners like myself, and it's about volunteering your time, so people don't have to pay exorbitant amounts of money for private care, but they're not caught in a system that tells them that they have to have this, or they have to do a particular thing in order to get the type of treatment that they need. So we're starting to see the communities beginning to pull together now and form, which is wonderful. I've waited 19 years. I was first told about this 19 years ago. Wow. So I've been waiting for this for a long time. So to the likes of me, it's very exciting. To the likes of you, it's very exciting. And for some other people, like some of my students last year, they were freaked out. But then as it went on and we spent more time together, they began to understand it. And I was saying, research. Don't take anybody's word, and go into your heart. That's a portal. You can access information through that portal. It's extremely powerful. Find out what you feel is right for you. And so many people have become empowered because they started relying on themselves and started trusting the information that they feel, so.
That's it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, given that I asked you the final question about 45 minutes ago, we're turning this into a mini series. But honestly, I've enjoyed this conversation. I've enjoyed the chat that we've had. I know that much of what we talk about is going to be beyond most people's, from a mainstream perspective, is going to be on most people. But all I'd say is just go within, ask yourselves the question. Don't let your ego mind dominate. Yeah. But the fact is that, amazing though it may seem, hand on heart, what we've been talking about is truth. Now, everybody is entitled to their own version. We totally honor that. This is a free will planet. You decide for yourself when the time is right. But Aoibhinn, thank you. Definitely going to put your website up there as a link as well, because I would recommend anybody who's curious, go and check it out. I know we don't want to overburden you, Aoibhinn, and get you burnt out or anything, but I think
learned my lesson. Don't you worry. I look after myself properly now.
But there's a reason you're busy, and it's a gift. It's a gift. So anyway, thank you, Aoibhinn. I appreciate it. And thank you to our Elevated Planet community for tuning in. And we look forward to more fantastical revelations in the future.
Thank you very, very much, John. It was lovely having a conversation with you today. I forget that some of this stuff is quite out there. That's not even the deeper stuff. That's the quite surface level. Maybe yes. I won't go there with the heavy stuff.
We'll have to come back on that one as a sequel.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much. And I will talk to you anon.
Thank you, Aoibhinn. Take care.